What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to From the Bench. I'm your host, Will Meadows, and today is our Wednesday edition of the show. And we've got a lot to talk about. I mean, with football and basketball season here, we're always going to have a lot to talk about. It's always going to be an eventful episode. But before I get into anything, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment on this video about how you feel about the coming games this weekend for Tennessee football and basketball. But without further ado, let's get right into the episode. Per usual, we're going to start with football and then go to basketball. So, breaking news from the football aspect of things from the athletic department today is Nico is in concussion protocol following the Mississippi State game. His injury was kind of up in the air, and they have confirmed he's in concussion protocol now. Josh Heupel says good things about it, but do we take that with a grain of salt? Do we believe him? Who knows? We got to just pray for his health. But one of our segments for football today is going to be, what does the offense look like if Nico's a no-go and Gaston Moore is running the show? So, in my opinion, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I think we need Nico to win this football game. But I don't think this thing's just, a mess if Gaston Moore has to play. We've all seen how bad Carson Beck has been the past few weeks and games for Georgia. But you guys watched the Alabama game. I know he threw a pick on his only play in, but Josh Heupel obviously has a lot of confidence in Gaston Moore. Usually when a backup like that has to come in, you kind of just hand the ball off and pray that it doesn't get turned over and hope that your quarterback's all right. But they came out guns a-blazing with him, and they went deep. And this past week against Mississippi State, they were going deep a lot. He throws a pretty deep ball. He's got a strong arm, distance-wise. And outside of Josh Heupel, this guy knows the playbook better than anybody in the program. He's been here for, 4 or 5 years now. Every year Heupel's been here. Gaston Moore's been here. He's not a stranger to what needs to happen inside of this offense. And it's clear that the coaching staff has a lot of confidence in him. Compare and contrast the two, obviously. Again, I'm not sugarcoating anything. Would be a lot better off with Nico. I don't want you guys to get that message that I think, we're going to be perfectly fine with Gaston Moore. I'm just saying it's not going to be a train wreck, and there's a chance. Gaston Moore, like I said, it throws a pretty deep ball. It's got a strong arm. I don't think he throws it with much velocity. Nico zips it, man. He's got a strong arm. We're all kind of used to Joe Milton last year, and that thing was a fastball. But Nico has a very strong arm, and he zips the ball, especially across the middle. The few throws that Gaston Moore had across the middle, they weren't bad throws, don't get me wrong. They were on target, but they seemed kind of lofted, and maybe that's just because we're used to Nico. And being in person, it looked a little slower because that's the game. But he does throw a pretty deep ball, and we've struggled with deep ball connections. They started looking better against Mississippi State, and then obviously Nico got hurt. So there's that aspect of it, the zip of the ball across the middle, and I think that the main aspect of it is his elusiveness is not near compared to what Nico is. He's not near the athlete Nico is. Nico's I wouldn't necessarily call him a dual threat, but he can definitely make a play with his legs. So I guess he'd be a dual threat. Ever since Lamar Jackson started playing football, and I'm sure Michael Vick was the same way, but Lamar especially, and there's so many more now with Lamar, Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels. There's just a lot of running quarterbacks now. The term dual threat has kind of almost regressed, just because when you think dual threat, you think Lamar. And just because you don't run like Lamar doesn't mean you can't run the ball. So I guess I'd call him a dual threat. And I think that there's going to be lack thereof with Gaston Moore in the lineup. And I think that's kind of a given. But again, I'm not saying – I'm just saying I don't think it'd be a train wreck if Gaston Moore were to have to go out there. Because, again, he knows the playbook. And I'm saying what does the offense look like if Nico's a no-go? It's the same principles. You're going to have to run the ball. Can't get behind the sticks at all. We can't afford false starts and things like that in this hostile environment at all, especially if we have to play with a backup quarterback. You just can't afford it at all. I mean, this is the biggest game in Tennessee's recent history, in my opinion. And obviously everybody's aware that it's a big game, but I'm saying, like, if you take a step back and you think about the implications of this game, the term elimination game is going to get thrown out there a lot. And I don't know if it's definitely an elimination game for Georgia. Is it an elimination game for us? My opinion, yes. And some people don't agree with that. I'll get into that in a little bit later. If you take a step back, if your ticket is punched just about if you win this game. I mean, even theoretically, if you were to lose to Vanderbilt, a 10-2 team with wins over Alabama and Georgia, I don't see how that team doesn't get in. But, I mean, I think we're going to beat Vanderbilt, but, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I just don't see a world, and I've said this before, where a 10-2 Tennessee gets in with Alabama being our best win over Georgia, over Ole Miss, over Alabama, and I know everybody's going to be like, oh, well, Alabama, we have the head-to-head over them. Alabama has beaten LSU and Georgia. So, I mean, in my opinion, this is a game you got to win. Because after Alabama, our best win is Oklahoma, Florida. I mean, it's lack thereof. I mean, Vanderbilt, if you win that game, and even then, that's going to be an 8-4 team at best if you win that game. So yeah, I mean, that's another. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But this is, if you take a step back, I really do believe this is the biggest game Tennessee's going to have in recent history. But as I say that, on the other side of the sidelines, the home team, Georgia, Carson Beck has struggled, man. I mean, there's no hiding it. Everybody's seen it. The turnover problems, the decision-making is not there. Now, don't get me wrong, they don't have near the offense that they used to. They don't have a Ladd McConkey. They don't have a Brock Bowers. The O-line's not as good as it usually is. The running backs aren't as good as they usually are. Sorry. In Georgia, expectations, because they're used to having Todd Gurley's and Sonny Michel's and Nick Chubb's and James Cook's and everything under the sun. Zamir White. But, I mean, Trevor Etienne's a very good running back. Nate Frazier's a good running back. And if you're Tennessee, that's what you got to stop. Because Mississippi State kind of ran all over us this past week. Not all over us because, I mean, they only had 14 points. But they didn't. They ran the ball pretty well. And you can't get into situations where they're turning off 5 and 6 yards every first down. So you got to force Carson Beck to throw the football. And, if you would have told somebody that to start the year, as Carson Beck was a Heisman contender and a first-round draft pick lock is what it seemed like, I mean, that's kind of gone all out the window. Georgia's O-line struggled a lot against Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a very good D-line, but I think ours is better, and I think Tennessee has the best D-line in the country. So, I mean, and against Ole Miss, like I said, it seemed like it was 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 7 and 8 all the time in that game. And I tell you what, if it's 3rd and 7 and 8 with James Pierce and Omar Norman-Lott and Bryson Eason and Dominic Bailey and Joshua Josephs, it's not going to be fun for Georgia. So, I mean, you're going to have a good game plan and try and play your best game script against Georgia in this huge game. But, we'll get into the whole breakdown of the game on Friday and what I feel like the Vols need to do to go to Athens and win that must-win game, in my opinion. But around the SEC this past week, Texas just stomped Florida and, cut Florida some slack. They're playing with their third-string quarterback. Florida probably could have beat Georgia last week if DJ Lagway didn't get hurt. But, he did, so Georgia ended up winning. And, again, that's another reason why I really feel like we can beat Georgia. That secondary's been shaky, which is not normal for Georgia. But, again, we'll get into that later. South Carolina killed Vanderbilt. I've been saying, and I know everybody that likes to, besides Tennessee fans, but everybody around the country loves to cheer for Vanderbilt because they've never been good, and Diego Pavia is a great story. And don't get me wrong, I like Diego Pavia as a football player, and he's a solid quarterback, and he's a good quarterback. He's the best player on that team. I don't buy the Vanderbilt hype. I never have. I think we should beat them pretty handily, especially with it not being a home game for them, really, because there's going to be more Tennessee fans than there are Vanderbilt fans there. But that's just my opinion. South Carolina killed them. It was 28-7. Bama wins big over LSU, and boy, Jalen Milroe's legs were churning. I mean, those things he churned. I mean, he pumped out, I think, 180 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns, something crazy like that. So credit to the Roll Tide. As much as I hate saying that, Kalen DeBoer heard all the rumors about, is this guy, was this the right hire, this, that, and the other. And he's kind of putting some to rest. He's won games he's needed to win. I mean, if he wins out 10-2 in a rebuild year, it is not a bad record. And everybody wants to point back at that Vanderbilt loss. Well, upsets happen, and the SEC is a different animal this year. Missouri wins an absolute barn burner of a game against Oklahoma. I don't know if anybody watched that game. I went back and watched it. Just, a freak game. Oklahoma got a strip sack, took the lead, tied it. They threw a touchdown, then got a strip sack, tied the game, and then Missouri gets a strip sack of their own and wins the game. So it was absolutely crazy. 30-23 was the final, and Missouri gets another win. And this is looking like the worst 2-loss team I've ever watched in my life. I just don't think that team's good at all. And Ole Miss obviously beat Georgia in the game of the week in the SEC. Just a huge game. And, credit to Lane Kiffin. I saw a stat they were showing. He was 0-5 versus top 5 opponents at Ole Miss, and it was giving up 52.5 points per game, which is unreal. So that's his first big win. And I don't know if it's his first big win, but it's definitely his biggest win in his tenure at Ole Miss, so credit to him. I know this is probably an unpopular opinion with Tennessee fans, but I like Lane Kiffin. I know a lot of people don't, and I more than understand why you wouldn't, but I don't have a problem with Lane Kiffin. I kind of like him. But that's going to wrap up the football section of things. But the basketball section, it's not too lengthy. It's not got a lot to talk about, but Tennessee's got Montana tonight at home, and then they've got Austin Peay on Sunday afternoon. I think it's 3:30 tip-off this coming Sunday at the Thompson Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena. Still can't get used to that, or whatever you want to call it. It's Thompson Bowling. And the Vols look to improve to 4-0, which they very well should. Austin Peay's coming off a big win as a program and as a team against Butler, at Butler. So credit to them. They've got Hansel Emmanuel, which if you guys know who that is, he's got the one arm, and he still starts for them, which is incredible. It's an incredible story. But really around the SEC in basketball, there's a lot of good teams. I have them written down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 really good basketball teams. Alabama is obviously the second-ranked team in the country. They look really good. They struggled to hit free throws in their second game, but that team's still really good. Mark Sears is one of the best guards in the country. Florida, they played USF their first game of the year. USF's not a bad basketball team, and they got it done there. Auburn is the real deal. As long as their team doesn't eat them from the inside, like I don't know if you guys heard about the fight on the plane the other day, but I know I kind of mentioned that on the last episode. But that team is talented. Tahad Pettiford, the freshman, was killing Houston the other night, 20-something points. Houston was the 4th-ranked team in the country, and that's a big win for Auburn. Johnny Broom's one of the best big men in the country. That team's going to be good all year. I've got us, Arkansas, and John Calipari. They're a good team. They lost to Baylor, but Boogie Flan's one of the better freshmen in the country. They've got a solid team, and they're deep. Love seeing Adu not playing much over there. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not a fan of Adu. I don't think you are a real Vol if you go to play for Calipari after playing for us. Ole Miss, I have a little question mark around them. I don't know how good they are, but I think they're solid. And then the one I really have an asterisk beside, Kentucky, before I say anything, they've got Duke Well, at the time of this recording, they have Duke in a few minutes. But when you guys see this, I'll have played them last night. I hope Duke wins. I don't know if anybody knows this, but I'm a little bit of a Duke fan. My dad grew up watching them and loving them, so it kind of got passed on to me. So I hope Duke and Cooper Flag beats them. I know that's another team than the Vols, but I'd still cheer for the Vols over Duke. I mean, I did when we played them a couple years ago when they had Filipowski and we had Kamwa and all that nonsense. But so I hope, and I hate Kentucky, so I hope Duke beats Kentucky. And then the one I have an asterisk beside their name is Texas. They lost to Ohio State this past week. Texas was preseason ranked, I think, 19. But Texas might have the best player in the country, legitimately, and he's a freshman. Trey Johnson is ridiculous. I don't know if you guys have got the chance to watch him, but if you haven't, you need to. He had 29 points in the first game and then had 28 in the second, and he is just a bucket getter. In my opinion, he's the best player in the SEC, and I don't think it's close. Again, I'm very high on him. I think he might be the best player in the country. And I know in the world of college basketball as it is now, it's so dominated by older guys like Hunter Dickinson on Kansas and R.J. Davis on UNC and Mark Sears, but that guy is special. But Tennessee, obviously, in my opinion, they're probably the best team in the SEC right now, or second best. I'd put Auburn above us right now. Auburn at Tennessee is going to be a fun game to watch. And I hope that I'll be able to go. I've never been to see Tennessee play Kentucky. I want to see that this year, whether it's at Rupp or whether it's at Thompson-Boling. I'd rather it be at Thompson-Boling. But that's going to wrap it up for the basketball segment. We'll go in-depth about their game tonight against Montana on Friday, and then their game coming up on Sunday against Austin Peay after we talk about the big game coming up against Georgia. But that's all we have for today. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment on this video about how you feel about Georgia, about how you feel about Carson Beck and his struggles, anything. I'd love to respond to you guys and let you know what I think about it. I mean, you guys see what I think about it on here, but if you have any specific questions, I'd love to answer them. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you guys for all the support on the last few episodes, and thank you guys for watching, and go Vols.